That's Psalms 15. We read it in its entirety. And it reads, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hills? It says, he who walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. He who does not backbite with his tongue, nor does evil to his neighbor, nor does he take up reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. He who does not put out his money as usual, nor does he take bribes against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. But today I want to use as a subject, as we talk to our young people, will you be there? Turn to the person next to you and ask them, will you be there? Yeah, let's say that again, because I really didn't hear you ask them. Really ask them, will you be there? Will you be there? Question is, will you be there? And I'll tell you that oftentimes it saddens me to see people who live their lives day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, but they never consider where they're going to spend eternity. That they never take that in consideration at all. Now, they spend plenty of time thinking about considering earthly things. That they consider where they're going to go to school. They consider where they're going to work. They consider where they're going to live. And those things are important. They consider who they're going to go out with. They consider who they're going to marry. They consider how many children they're going to have. And lots of folks consider what kind of car they're going to drive or what kind of house they're going to live in. And I'll tell you, those things are important. You should take them in consideration. But I want to be truthful to you today that the most important aspect of your life is where are you going to spend eternity? Will you spend eternity with Satan? Or will you spend eternity with God? Will you spend eternity in hell? Or will you spend eternity in heaven? And as Christians, our number one goal is to assure ourselves that we're going to spend eternity in heaven with God. I know this true because Jesus wrote in John 14, 2 and 3, he says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. If it was not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And he goes on to say, if I go and prepare this place for you, I will come again, and I will receive you into myself. And what that says to me then, he says, now, wherever I am, you may be there also. And so, the truth of the matter is that Jesus has already gone off to heaven. And he's already prepared a place for you and me. And he says now, I'm here and I'm going to come back and get you. But the question becomes, will you be ready? Will you be ready to go when he comes back to get you? And I'll be honest with you, oftentimes I wonder if people even give that a second thought. As they live their lives in any kind of way that they want, as they do whatever they want, as they say whatever they want, I'm concerned that people are not really taking into consideration where will they spend eternity. I know that the church sometimes, and especially these current new days, always want to make people feel really good about themselves, and that's good. But I want to tell you, though, that if you don't take in consideration where you're going to spend eternity, you may end up in the wrong place. Listen, listen, listen. I don't want nobody to open up their eyes in hell. I know we don't talk about that much in the church because it scares people, but I believe that if it scares you into living a life that God has called you to live, you ought to be scared. You ought to be scared, because I'd rather be scared than to burn. Listen, listen, listen. I know that the church is a place where people now go to feel real good and get some good word, so when they walk out, they don't feel bad. But let me just say this, and it's real, that hell is real. But whether we want to believe it or not, whether we want to ignore the fact that it exists, and we know it's real because the Bible says it's real. But the good news is that heaven is real. And so you have a choice. Over here, you have hell, and over here, you have heaven. But my question to you is, will you be there on this side? On this side where heaven is, on this side where God is. Will you be there? I'm going to hurry to Psalms 15, and I want you to sort of look at it. If you have your Bible, just open it up, because I'm not going to miss a verse. I'm going to hit all of them. And so the first thing I want you to understand, when I looked at Psalms 15, the psalmist starts out with a couple of questions. He says, now, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Now, the key to that word abide is that it really means who will remain with you. Who's going to continue with you? Who's going to stay with you, Lord? Who? And then the second question he asked, which was part of the same question, he says, who will dwell in your holy hill? Now that word dwell means that to have a permanent residential status with that person. And so here the psalmist is asking God, who will be able to have a permanent residential status with you? Who's going to be able to come and not have to PCS? Who's going to come and they won't get any orders to have to leave? The psalmist said, who is going to be able to dwell and be with you? And in this place that he's talking about, in this holy hill, this is a place where you can enjoy God's fellowship, RJ. That you can be there, and you and God and you can just be hanging out. And in the place that he's asking God about is a place where you can enjoy God's protection. It's a place where you can be up there and you don't have to worry about no drive-by shootings. You don't have to worry about nothing. You'll be there with God, and he'll have you surrounded, and you'll be safe and secure. This place that the psalmist is asking about is a place where God will have all of your provisions. See, you don't have to worry about if you run out of money, because you don't have to buy nothing. You don't have to worry about running out of food, because all of your food is provided. You don't have to worry about running out of clothes, because you will be clothed in the Spirit of God. This place that he calls this holy hill, this is the place where we've heard you say Shekinah. That's the place where the Shekinah is. That's the place where God's glory is present. And that's the place that we want to be. But my question today is, will you be there? You need to really consider that. You really need to think about that, because it's going to depend on a few things. And I'm going to hurry on here. As I looked at this, the psalmist began to describe to us the character of the people who's going to be there. He began to describe the character of the people who's going to have a permanent resident up there with God. He says, now, there's a certain character that the people who's going to be able to remain and stay and hang out throughout eternity with God. And the first type of person and the first character that you got to have, and I'm going to give you 4 so you know I'm on number 1. Number one, in verse 2, the ones who are going to be able to hang out and be there with God are those who live a righteous lifestyle. Okay? So he says the people who are going to be able to be there, in verse 2, he says those who walk uprightly. Then he says those who work righteousness. Then he says those who speak the truth in their heart. Now, what that says to me is that you can't live a low-down life and get there. It says that you can't do any and everything that you want to and still get there. It tells me, too, that you can't tell lie on top of lie on top of lie and still think that you're going to get there. Because what he's really saying is that you got to live upright. He's saying that you got to be right. And he says you got to speak right. So in other words, live right, be upright, and tell the truth. So really, your lifestyle should be one of a righteous person. And if your lifestyle is a lifestyle of a righteous person, you have assured yourself that you will be a chance to be there. See, the problem with most people, they want to live however they want to live. They want to do whatever they want to do, but yet they say, I want to go to heaven. Well, the psalmist says that's not going to work. And so that's the first thing. The second thing, as I look at this text, is that the people who are going to be able to be there, the people who are going to be able to be in this permanent residence with God, is those who treat people right. In verse 3, he says, now, the folks who's going to be able to be there are those who don't backbite with their tongue, those who don't do evil to their neighbor, and those who don't take up reproach against their friends. Now, what that says, though, is you can't attack people's character and their reputation. It says you can't speak unfavorably or slanderous about other people. It says you can't do mean and hurtful things to other people. It says you can't go around finding fault in other people. So in other words, you got to treat people right. You can't treat people any kind of old way and think the doors of heaven is going to be opened up for you. No, the psalmist says no. You got to make sure that you're not backbiting with your tongue. You got to make sure you're not being evil to your neighbor. You got to make sure that you're not having a reproach against your friends. And so if you're doing that, I just want to let you know, give you a notice. If you're involved in any of that, trust me, you're putting your opportunity to be there with God in jeopardy. And so let me tell you what you can do. What you can do is that you can do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. I tell you what you can do. You can love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if you can do that, it'll take care of all of the things you said you can't do. Because if you treat people like you want to be treated, you don't have to worry about backbite. You don't have to worry about doing evil to them. You don't have to worry about doing a reproach against them, because if you treat them the way you want to be treated. And you know, I oftentimes wonder, do people really think about how they're treating people? Do they really think about what would that feel like if they did that to me? I believe that if they would, some of the stuff that people do and say about other people, they wouldn't be saying it. Listen, what kind of God would we have if he let us come to heaven, a place where we're supposed to have peace and tranquility forever and ever, and we behaving like that? Listen, we got enough drama down here. And so, number two is that you got to learn that you have to treat other people right. Number three, if you really want to be there, if you want to end up in that place where God is, if you really want to go into that holy place, you got to be committed to doing what's right. Now, it's in verse 4, but I had to do a little digging to figure that one out, but it came through. So here the psalmist says, for those whose eyes of a vile person is despised. And I'm going to explain that because it seemed a little confusing to me, but I had to dig a little deeper. And then he says, those who honor those who fear the Lord. And then it says, those who swears to their own hurt and does not change. What did all that mean? That was a lot of mumbo jumbo. But when you sort it out, what he really says now, he says now, when you look at evil people, you despise the evil that they do, like God does. In other words, I want you to hear this because I think we'll miss it if we don't listen closely. He did not say despise the people. He say that. That's what he was saying. What he said was despise the evil that they do. In other words, you got to separate the people from their action. Because if you don't, you'll go around hating people. It's not the people that God is wanting you to despise. He wants you to despise the same evil that he despised. Because, listen, if he's telling you to hate the people, that means that he's a God of hate. And we know he's not a God of hate. He's a God of love. And so since he's a God of love, he's saying, not the people do you despise, but the act that the people do. Because you got to separate the two. And so then he says, and I like this one, the second part of that he says, now, when you look at people who fear God, you honor them like God honored them. In other words, when somebody is good and they do the things of God and they live in the way God would have them to live, you honor them because God honors them. But sometimes, you got to agree with this, that sometimes when people do good, when you do good, you're trying to do the things that God would have you to do, oftentimes, if you're not careful, people will despise you for that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And your young people may not know yet, but just keep living. It's when you're doing right that people like you the least. But what you have to do as a Christian, as a child of God, is that those who God honors, who do what God have them to do, you honor them just like God honors them. And the third thing, he says now, for those who swear to their own hurt and does not change. What he's saying there is that you must be committed to doing the right thing no matter what. It said no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what your situation is, no matter what your problems are, no matter what you're going through, you have to say, I'm going to do right. I don't care if the walls are falling down. I don't care if all H is breaking loose. I don't care. I'm going to do right. And so what it says is, because you have committed yourself to doing the right thing, it doesn't matter what happens in your life, you're going to do the right thing. And you know what? I'll be honest with you, sometimes there's so much evil around, it's hard to keep doing right. But what the text is saying, it doesn't matter if there's so much evil around. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. You got to continue to do the right thing. And I'm on my fourth point, and I'm almost done. And the fifth thing, the fourth point in verse 5, if you're going to be there, if you're going to be in that place, in that permanent place with God, you have to say to yourself, you have to deal honestly with other people. Now, here's what the psalmist says. He says, now, the people who are going to be there are those who don't put out his money as usury. I'm going to explain that. And those who don't take up bribes against the innocent. I'm going to explain that. See, what he was talking about in the usury part, in the usury is just interest. So you got to understand that there's an interest. And it was illegal, unlawful for the Israelites to charge interest to its citizens. But they were doing it. And so the thing is, and you know what? You guys hadn't had any bills yet. You don't have no credit card yet, hopefully. You don't understand. But there is a difference in the interest that's charged to the poor with poor credit than the rich who won't have to worry about credit. What does that mean to you? What it means to you is that you need to be just and honest in all of your financial dealings. Because one day you may be the CEO. You may be the president of the bank. You may not be there now, but as you sit here, we don't know where you're going. In fact, you don't know where you're going. But if you get there, make sure that you're just and fair in your financial dealings. And then that part where he talks about bribes, what was going on, he mentions that because the judges in Israel were being paid to make a verdict. In other words, it wasn't no trial by jury. One judge, if you gave him enough money, he'll find you guilty or innocent based on that amount. In other words, you may not have broke the law at all. But if you got paid enough money, and so what does all that say? What does that mean to you? It means that in your financial transaction, you got to be honest. You got to do the right thing. In your business transactions, you got to be honest. You got to do the right thing. In your legal transactions, you got to be honest. You got to do the right thing. And the thing about it is this. You may think you're getting away with it. But the thing about getting away with it, who's suffering? It's the persons that you're treating unfairly. It's the persons that you're charging too much money. It's the persons that's going to jail for something they didn't do. Because one of you may be a judge or a lawyer one day. We're going to believe that for you. But make sure if that happens that you don't let money be the decision maker. That you let the law be the decision maker. And if you ever become the president of the bank or owner of a company or own a car dealership, who knows? But please, please, don't charge 23% interest. Keep it around the fair market value. Because see what happens, and please don't get a check cashing store or a payday loan store. Because in all those places, the interest, the usury is wrong and it hurts people. Right now you think, I don't do that. I know guys that I grew up with who own pawn shops. And the pawn shop charges you an enormous amount of interest. So see, one day y'all may have some money and decide to go into business. And so this really do mean something. It may sound like, what the pastor talking about? But what I'm trying to say to you is that you got to do the right thing. And you got to do the right thing in whatever you do. You got to do the right thing when you have money. You got to do the right thing when you don't have money. You got to do the right thing when you're on top. You got to do the right thing when you're on bottom. You just got to do the right thing. And I love, and I'm at the end of this text, but he says something almost like a throwaway. He says, now, if you do these things, you will never be moved. And what that said to me is that you do what things? If you live a lifestyle that's righteous, if you treat people right, if you commit to doing the right thing all the time, if you deal honestly with people, what he said is that you will always be able to be with God. And there was a song that old folks used to sing, a hymn. It says, now, Jesus is my Savior. I cannot be moved. In his love, I found favor. I cannot be moved. And then it goes on and says, like a tree that's planted by the waters, I cannot be moved. And the thing about it is this. If you do the right thing, if you live your life the way God has called you to live, you will make assurance that you yourself will be there with God. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm telling you, if you really want your life to be a life that is set in stone, you don't have to worry about what your eternity looks like. You have to make a decision that you're going to live your life. And you know, and I'm done. What disturbs me so much sometimes is people to pretend to be one thing, but then they live another thing. I say to myself, are they even considering? Are they even considering their eternal destiny? I just want to say to you young people, while you're young, and I tell you, I know you don't always have some good role models to follow. I got it, I know it. Because there's some folks I wouldn't follow. But I want to say to you, live your life in a way that if you die today, nobody has to wonder, I wonder. I tell you, the saddest funerals that you ever go to where people are crying and going crazy is that they're wondering if the person in that casket is going to heaven. Because they see how they had lived, and they're not sure if they made that decision on time. But if you live your life in a way, if you're on your deathbed, you don't have to worry. You can be like some of the old folks that say, come on and get me. I don't mind, God, I can go now. If you can't say that, you better start getting yourself together. Because what you want to be able to say is, I'm going to be there. On that, as they say, on that great good up morning, I'm going to wake up and be up there walking the streets of gold, hanging out with Jesus. And that's what you want to be able to do. You don't want to live your life one day on this side, another day on this side, another day down the middle. Live a life that's honorable and righteous and upright, so you don't have to worry when your day comes. And everybody who's here, if you're breathing, one day you're going to stop breathing. You're going to be assured of that. You're assured that you were born, and you can be assured that you will die. But the question becomes, where will you be when you do die? And I want you to be up there in glory, as the old folks say. I want you to be up in a place where all that you need is provided. All the peace, all the joy, all the comfort, all the hallelujah, all the praise, everything you want. It'll be a sad day if you come to a place where you open up your eyes and all you know is there's nothing but fire and brimstone there. There's two places. Believe it or not. I know that we have a church nowadays that's all about psychology and making people feel well adjusted and feeling good. But the truth of the matter is this. When you leave here, there is a destiny. There is a place. Either it could be heaven or it could be hell. And Jesus went to Calvary so we could have an opportunity to go to heaven. He went on the cross. Every time you hear that Easter story, all that really means is that you have a chance to go and spend eternity with Jesus Christ. He came, he died, he rose, and he ascended. He did those things so you won't have to worry, because he came that you may be redeemed. See, he knew that you were probably going to sin, and we understand that. But let me tell you something. You don't have to live and die in sin. You can get your life together.